present me, calendar full, heart heavy, answering calls like confessions, chasing a title, dodging my own reflection. I was raised to measure worth by a door with my name. Now I'm staring through the glass, asking who I became. Past, present, future, all in the room, they're calling my name.
Welcome everyone to another amazing episode of Past, Present, Future. I am stoked to have here with me today Devin and Kenneth. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, dude.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
On the show, we're going to take it from the start, take it from the top. But before we do, we have a ritual we need to do. We need to do a best of 3, rock, paper, scissors, to determine who goes first. I'll narrate a voiceover for those listening in audio. Are you both ready?
All right, I'm ready.
I want a clean, fair fight. No dirty tricks.
Is this best of 3 or is it just one round?
Best of 3. We're going to give it kind of...
I play this with my
advantage.
daughter, and sometimes she makes up one. I will not make up. We'll stick to the 3.
No cheating.
If you watch some of Kenneth's content, there's definitely a lot of...
Cheating.
There's cheating involved. It's with potato chips. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
All right,
High stakes. All
ready?
right. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. All right, Devin drew the scissors. Kenneth drew the rock. Kenneth 1, Devin 0.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Okay.
That's 0-0.
No.
1-1.
Let's see,
Paper, let's see. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Ah!
Kenneth has one. Yeah, let's do kind of like, if you want to do like a brief intro, shout out your social handles. Kenneth, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so my name is Kenneth and Nesimento Lopes, Nesi for short. You can find me on Instagram, social media, all social media platforms at Nesimento. And yes, a little bit about me. I'm originally from the small state of Rhode Island and living here in Los Angeles. Met Peretz on LinkedIn recently and Devin as well. So it's been a great experience.
My next message is going to recruit you to the Cabo Verde team.
Yes,
so stay
go
tuned.
Cabo Verde. If you guys are watching the FIFA World Cup, you know, we'll take all prayers and all good faith and goodwill. So,
Devin.
And I'm Devin McGovern. You can find me on Instagram at Devin McGovern, TikTok, YouTube at Devin.McGovern. If you have the at Devin McGovern, I will take it on TikTok and YouTube. Right now it's got the dot. But I'm a former reality TV producer, worked in that industry for about a decade before took a little bit of a detour downward, and I had to make a career pivot in my mid-40s to content creation. So I turned the chaos of parenting into content, and now I'm known as Devin the Dad online. And here we are chatting about content and career pivots, but I'm glad to be here.
Start at the beginning. Very fascinating career. Would love to hear a little bit more about those early days, how you got into executive producing and kind of all that work that you did along the way.
Yeah, so we'll start back in 1986. No, we're not going to go back that far. I moved to California from Colorado with dreams of Hollywood. Got off that bus, the little bus, drove out here, wanted to be an actor, did some of that, was not great. Did some stand-up comedy, was also not that great.
Rewatch Old School. Look for college student uncredited, and you'll find Devin.
Exactly. I'm in the front row as Will Ferrell and Jeremy Piven are tumbling down the stairs. I'm right in the front row there. So I did that for a little bit, and then I stumbled across one of my buddies who was working in reality TV, and I loved the industry and the creative process, and I realized reality TV was very similar to scripted TV in that we're making a TV show. And the great thing in the early parts is that you were wearing all the hats, and then after being in the industry for a while, you're wearing all the hats, which is tough. But I loved it. I worked my way up from PA eventually to showrunner. I was the EP of a show called Bar Rescue for Paramount. The pandemic hit and shut productions down. So I made it to the top, and then everything kind of slowed down. So in that time, I was trying to figure out what I could do. I didn't know when productions were going to come back. My wife and I had just had our first daughter. So I thought, maybe I could do some dad parenting content. I wasn't a TikTok dancer, and I wasn't doing any of those, dances. And I thought, well, maybe I could do takeaway. Like, I've always wanted to be a dad, even though I started late. I'm over 40, but I was like, I love being a dad. Maybe there's I could teach you how to sleep train your kid. My daughter's about to be 7. I still co-sleep. So I have no tips or tricks for dad parenting. And I realized that wasn't the ticket. And it was, we had taken both of our daughters to dinner with my grandparents. And I had seen this trend online where it was like touching grass when things are hard. So we took them, and it was an absolute shit show at dinner. Like, they're toddlers, and it was like, what? And that was that. So I came home, touched some grass, some trees. My mom filmed it, and I just wrote text on screen. Just took my 2 toddlers to dinner because WTF was that. 2 days later, I had 8 million views. And the comments were, thank you for showing what dinner's really like. I feel seen. I feel heard. And it was in that moment that was the takeaway. The takeaway for people was feeling not so alone in the parenting journey. And I realized that sometimes when you're rocking your kid to sleep in the middle of the night and you feel like you're the only one doing it, social media has kind of helped with, oh, I'm not the only one whose kid is screaming at 6 a.m. I'm not the only one who, like, their kid spilled something all over the floor and I'm cleaning up and we're late to school. And the relatability of parenting has taken off for Devin the Dad, and now we've turned the chaos of parenting into a content career.
It's a powerful story. It's really kind of, you write a lot about, you have a great newsletter as well. You write about what it's like making that transition and finding yourself in those moments and really kind of working your way up to kind of the top of your craft and kind of starting back again in the messy middle. And you write a lot about kind of the grief involved in that. Taking a little bit of a step backwards, definitely kind of curious to learn a little bit more, and I think it ties to what you do now in terms of a universe building. You speak about Bar Rescue, but there wasn't just Bar Rescue. There was kind of a universe that you guys created. There was like Marriage Rescue and Gym Rescue, and kind of what's it like kind of both like in building universes and developing new concepts and figuring out like what sticks and what doesn't, and how do you feel like some of that's translated to what you do now and like understanding new series and new content and formats, and it's both the same but different, I would feel would apply.
Right.
But love to like learn about that experience, especially at the level of EP where you're seeing all those kind of moving parts, the networks, all the framing and everything.
Well, I was very much a work for hire, so I just worked on what they put me on. And funny enough, not to downplay the work that IMDb does, but I have been trying to get Gym Rescue off of my resume for years. I never worked on it. I keep deleting it, and it keeps getting put back on. So I've only worked on Bar Rescue and Marriage Rescue, and those were simple concepts that were out of my hands, and they just brought me in. You know, and you're sticking to a similar framework with what works, though. So when you finally go into either production or post, you're like, oh, this is a framework. This is kind of what works. Don't mess with what's working. So I think that's kind of also, you know, with social, like the things that are working, it's okay to like continue to hit on those, you know, play with what works, you know. And I always tell people that I think sometimes people jump onto social media thinking they've got to do a bunch of things and they don't want to find a niche and something very specific. And I think as you get started, specific is better, because Instagram and the algorithm are very much like cable TV networks. Like ESPN is not going to put on a home renovation show. You know, if you turn on ESPN, you're going to get sports. And the algorithm is the same way. And I think people don't always understand that. So the algorithm has to know where to put you. So if you're like, I want to do some pottery, and then I want to build a home, and then talk about my kids, and then like plant a plant, then the algorithm's like, I don't really know what you're talking about. So I always say start very specific. And that's what I learned from doing TV. Is the network will pick up a specific show because that's what their other shows are about, and the algorithm's the same way. So I guess I learned that from my TV days.
And that was like that first piece of content you put was specific. There was emotional resonance. It wasn't complex, and that kind of was the magic that really kind of catapulted things. So it's
absolutely,
it's incredible.
Thank you.
Really, really great to hear about kind of those early days. Over to you, Kenneth. We're now do the kickoff return.
Yeah.
You have a really fascinating career, right? Like in addition to content, you have a very rich kind of career in operations. I'd love to just like hear about kind of what kind of some of the highlights of that career and what it was like kind of getting into these very operational, intense, kind of very impactful roles.
Yeah, so, you know, graduating university, you know, the dream is to land at a large company and work your way up down the ladder. And for me, it was really starting at base level, really just kind of working throughout different teams, different organizations, different scopes of work, and figuring out exactly where I work best. And as you get into these teams, you really realize, hey, this is the type of player I am. And for me, it was more so I'm the team player that's, coordinating and working amongst a group of people. I've always been like a pretty sociable guy, a pretty personable guy. And so program management really found me in that space where I can really be that connective tissue between different teams and different orgs. And so, rather than go deep on one specific area, I was like, let me touch all these areas and be able to help coordinate and drive things forward and highlight any risks and things of that sort that are coming up. So, I've loved the journey. I think it helps me at home as well, because I'm playing dad and I'm playing all these different roles. And I'm able to always be that connective tissue between. And so, yeah, I think learning how to execute and build systems and operate at a high level from my professional experience has definitely transitioned into my content creation experience. I'm like the content creator with the spreadsheets, with like the content calendar and all these things, because these are the systems that I'm learning in my professional day to day. So it's definitely been something that's been fruitful and something that I've been able to grow within, but also been able to take it into the content creation journey.
And people like underestimate, like you can have a lot of innovation and improvisation when you have structure. You have like the shoebox to play in.
Mm-hmm.
You can get kind of good creative energy from structure, from thinking a little bit kind of about some of like the work you've been doing in program management. Definitely love that idea of you both appreciate the technical kind of rigor that needs to be there, but you also understand it's about the people, it's about kind of the bottom line. So you'll kind of be that connective tissue to help things happen, which allows you to pick up a lot of different skills along the way. What are some of the things like kind of that you feel kind of like some like the highlights at? Like I know there was a lot of like logistics and like last mile delivery that you were involved in. I know there's some really more recently some like Gen AI workflows you've been implementing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think, with the age that we're in now, with AI coming about and becoming the forefront and like the buzzword of everyone's in the topic of discussion for everyone, learning how to utilize AI for like content creation and for simple things like building media kits or building websites or helping with ideation for, full scripts or coming up with captions and things of that sort. And I'm hoping that down the line it'll help with editing because I think that's the long pole in the tent. But yeah, I think overall just taking all of the tools that are available to us and utilizing them in different ways and trying to figure out ways to use them has definitely been helpful for me in the content creation journey. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think it's relevant. I think that kind of, it's a unique theme of what we're talking about. There's these tools and these skills we pick up. They're useful for us both personally and professionally, or both in our professional, personal pursuits. If I were to kind of frame the creator space.
Right.
I think something which I kind of spoke when I asked Devin a little bit about earlier, and I think is relevant kind of for both of you. We can go a little bit more to depth into that, is figuring out like what are the series or what are the kind of the series or kind of hooks that you kind of invest in, or what is like, how do you tell if something is you just continue to do it for the love of the game, or is this a series that's kind of more of like a long burn? I know kind of like you've had a kind of a couple of different creative pursuits, whether it's music, whether more kind of podcast style content, whether kind of more man on the street versus kind of to like some of the more recent content, which has really been kind of resonating and is kind of giving me ideas of like what I should put inside my Krispy Kreme donuts. Like there's a lot of really kind of great things, and to you as well. I mean, I think like what I really like about Devin's content is some of it is like there's like different types of humor. There's a humor where it's like the kind of like that, like the positive jump scare where you don't know what's going to happen next. But yeah, returning a little bit back from that, like how do you both view and kind of like talking about the spreadsheets and measuring, like how do you figure out what are the content series or formats you want to invest in more, and what are the how do you figure out those criteria?
Well, I think watching how people react to your content and being like, for me, I'm just observing how people are digesting and taking in the content and what the feedback is. I'm pretty good at reading if something is working or not. I'm just like looking at the pure data, right? Watch time, views, follower ratio, how much things are moving. And so I try to keep a pulse on what's working through the analytics. And I also I think you have to be a consumer in some ways. So keeping your eye on the street, keeping your eye on what's going on in the market of content creation. And a lot of what I've learned is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Similar to Devin, he had stated that he was watching a trend that was already kind of taking shape, and he said, hey, let me try to apply this to my story. I think that is a piece of feedback that anybody could take and build on their content creation journey and will help them. You know, I think a lot of times we're thinking, hey, how can we land the ship on the moon or on Mars? And you don't have to be the first. I think you just have to do you in the best way, and show your personality, show who you are. But I think keeping an eye on the street, keeping an eye on the landscape as it is, as well as looking at the analytics, has helped me adjust and pivot formats or decide whether to stay within that format. So like you said, right now we're doing a format where we're trying different foods in different ways, and it's working really well. And so, you know, I'd be a fool to jump off that, you know. And as much as my son's like, well, I just want to eat I just want to eat Chili's or whatever the case is, I'm like, all right, we can mix that in as well, you know. But I'm not forgetting what's working, right? And I'm trying to keep that in scope and figure out fresh ways to approach it to make it more exciting for him, right? And so, yeah, I think both those things, keeping an eye on the analytics, but also keeping a pulse on what's going on in the industry or in the ecosystem as a whole.
And to like tie it to startups, it's not always the first to market is the one, especially in an age now there's a bunch of AI tools. It's really even kind of about your strategy. You can afford to be a month or two late, but if you have a better kind of strategy, you can surpass and you can kind of overtake. So like I like your idea. Like it's not all about like being the person to come up with the trend, but it's like how well do you execute on that? Right.
And nobody can do it like you can do it for yourself. You know, nobody can be you, and your approach, your strategy, your editing style, your cadence, your topics of discussion. You know, I think Devin and I are both fathers, and we have completely different perspectives.
I think for me, it's what I learned in my producing days is what he talked about here is that I always told my producers that worked on my shows to watch TV, like use that as research. What is working? What's not working? Because we're not going to reinvent the wheel. At this point, it's too late in social to reinvent the wheel. When I was working in reality TV, we weren't going to reinvent the wheel. You just got to see what's working and find ways to put your spin on it. And that's what I do. Like that trend that I saw, I put my spin on it. And for me, I always try to at least hit a few trends a week. If there's a trend, find a way to put my spin on it, because they're going to push the trends. Whether they're pushing it to teach AI or they're just pushing them because that's the new song in town. It's hard to tell, but trends are trends for a reason. Do the research, like watch what's working with other people, then find a way to put your spin on it. And for me, there's endless, the kind of content that we create, the authentic parenting, the everyday moments, like there's happening with parenting every day. You know, we went from school to Maycember to like barely getting through school, then school ended, and now we've got summer camp. So there's endless content for me to create, and just keeping it relatable and real, I think, is what has done well for us. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I think anytime people are like, oh my gosh, this is really tough about parenting, it's like, oh yeah, huh, this should be some comment. And I read the comments, because sometimes a comment will hit on, oh, that could be a way to spin a video. And then sometimes, you know, after the kids go to bed, you're just watching through videos that you take, and you're like, if I write it in a way that's funny, for example, my wife just took a video of me in the pool with my youngest daughter, and my oldest daughter jumped back and hit her sister and me in the face. My wife was just filming, and I was like, what could we do? What could we write? How could we put our spin on it? And then it was like, if anyone was wondering what it's like having two kids, here it is. It has like 8 million views. I could have just posted it as a video, but putting my spin on it, like, hey, this is what it's like having two kids, takes it to that level of Devin the Dad, takes it to that level of the content that I'm continuing to create. So really, I have endless content just in my camera roll, and then on the daily. You know, everyone's been there where your kid is taking a poop while you're trying to sit down to eat, and it just happened to be caught on camera and took off. So that's just like, I'm not producing these moments. These are just moments that are happening throughout the day. So I think for me, it's just finding in the chaos of parenting, slowing down and finding how those moments can resonate with other people. But then also not like, we're not a family vlogging. I'm not putting the phone up and following us throughout the day. So I'm just capturing the short, small moments and bringing some relief and some humor to people's day, and also for my day, so that I don't lose my mind.
So it really is about like that editorial kind of layer and understanding kind of like how do you take that raw material and kind of and construct kind of a story around it. And it's part of that universe building,
Right.
Whether it's adding chapters in the same kind of cinematic universe or figuring out kind of sub narratives within that kind of overarching theme.
Yeah, and for me, when I was working in TV, I loved working in the field, as they call it, producing, but my favorite part was working in post, because we'd always say, fix it in post. Like in reality TV, like sometimes whatever happens, and then you have to fix it in post. And I find that challenge with social also, like, I'll fix it in post, like find a way to make it funnier than what it was, and I enjoy that process.
I mean, this is something that I'll give people a little bit behind the scenes, something we spoke about in the green room. It's sometimes you get as much footage as you can, and then you figure out like, hey, I have enough raw material. And this way, like it's why kind of people take multiple shots to make sure you have enough raw material to construct something with. I'm going to do another rewinding of the clock again. You both now have really kind of great standing kind of on social media, but I'd love to like hear a little bit more about the early days or things you wish you would have known when you're getting started, when you're like figuring out like which hashtags do I use, or how do I do my first video, or how do you kind of deal with that first moment of viral success. And a couple questions layered in over there, but I'd love to turn to you, Kenneth, and what was that early experience like, kind of finding your voice, experimenting, and just being like, whoa, like this is actually something that I can build here.
Right. Yeah, I think early on, one piece of advice I would have given myself was to just start, right? I think a lot of times we're trying to create the perfect piece of art, because creating content is an art form to me. And you want to present yourself in like the most punctual, most just like the best way possible. But I think that imperfection or that attempt to be a perfectionist will kind of slow you down, and slowed me down. And so early on, that was my story, right? I was trying to be overly polished, trying to present myself in a way that was part of me but wasn't fully me, right? And that means the good, bad, and the ugly. And so I would say lean into all three sides, right? And try to make content for each area of your life, whether it's the good, bad, or the ugly. And when you do hit some virality, lean into that. I think a lot of times people will have one video do really well and say, okay, I'm going to try something different. And for me, you should be doing the complete opposite. Lean into it. That's a signal, right? If people are enjoying it, commenting, and the algorithm has pushed this piece of content further, that's a direct signal that, hey, people like this, right? And use that as an indicator to say, hey, how can I double down on this but be a little more creative, or change it up a bit so it's not repetitive, right? So yeah, I think showing all different facets of your life and your personality. But early on, my son was always a content consumer. So he grew up in Gen A, and he's been watching YouTube videos since a child. And you almost feel guilty because you're like, I'm kind of the problem because I got him on these devices, right? And he's watching YouTube, and I think for me it was a mentality shift where I'm like, okay, well, this is his TV, right? Just similar to what Devin said, like these social platforms are now the CBSs, the NBCs, the ABCs of our generation, and figuring out a way to support them, because a lot of our kids, they look up to these YouTubers and they want to be a YouTuber, right? And figuring out, hey, how can I support them, right? And so for me, it was, okay, let me get him all the equipment, right? Let me just do the logistics, the operational stuff. Let me get everything ready for him. Not realizing this kid's 8 years old. He doesn't know what to do with any of this stuff. And so then you're like, okay, how can I contribute to this, right? And you're like, well, I'll just set everything up, I'll edit and do all of that. And then, you know, I think some kids pick that up and they run with it, and some kids need a little more encouragement. And so I grew up as in music, right? And so I was a musician. I was rapping, singing, making beats. And so I was always working on content in some format, you know, doing music videos to promote the audio. And so I've always had that creative instinct. And so I thought, let me try to join in on this and let me figure out my footing, because like I said, I was the perfectionist, the polished, the artist that just wanted to hit every beat on the beat, you know? And so I had to learn that just relax, let the shoulders down, take a deep breath, and like capture those moments, those regular moments. Don't overly produce this, you know? And I think that allowed us to initially go viral. We had like a video where I surprised them with a PS5 when PS5 first, PlayStation 5 first released, and that worked, right? And my error at that time was I didn't lean into it. You know, I'm like, okay, what else can I do? You know, and I'm like back to the music, you know, and I'm like jumping back and forth between these different roles when the algorithm gave me a clear signal. So it's like now, you know, going through that initial phase and seeing my account die down. Like we had the account that I had on TikTok was over like 400,000 followers at the time, and I wasn't even cracking 1,000 views. And so I was literally thinking about like deleting the account.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, this is not working. Like no videos were working, but it's because I wasn't following the cues of what the people were telling me. So jumping back in, my son was, you know, continuing to consume content, and then I'm just following his lead really, and I'm just like more so the execution vessel and the supporting vessel, and I allow him to have fun in it, right? And I'm just trying to figure out ways to keep it fun for him, and just show up as the goofy old dad that I am, you know, to him, you know. So yeah, I think in summary, I would say lean into what the algorithm is telling you. Try a bunch of things, from the good, the bad, the ugly, and don't try to be overly polished, you know, and just follow the signal and keep trying to repeat that and make it a little more creative.
So if I were to distill, I was gonna say dilute, but distill is a better word. It would be to use from a recent kind of industry over here. It would be press publish, kind of do things over there, find the signal and the noise, and I think those are like the two principles. Kind of continue to do that in that iteration. And I think it was like a great quote from, I forgot who it was, but like as an artist, your initial art is not going to be good. And because you're an artist, you have that sense, but like that's not a signal to stop, it's a signal to keep on going, and eventually your output will match your taste. And like it's kind of, sometimes there's a mismatch between that.
Right.
Over to Devin. I think for me, what's interesting is not just like how you started and that initial virality. What you write about a lot is like it can be kind of moving, shifting careers, or it can be moving kind of creative areas. The importance to both be moving forward, but also to deal with the realities of the grief of leaving something behind, of like in a sense. And as a complete outsider, I know kind of on the inside we're very harsh on our craft, but as an outsider, you're kind of at the top of your game, at the top of this kind of this universe, and you're like forced to pivot. Would love to, as much as you're comfortable, talk about like what that's like and what's helpful for you in both kind of embracing and kind of giving a Vikings funeral to the past, but also kind of pivoting and adopting a beginner mindset to like pick up something entirely new.
If you're an old dad, then I'm definitely a grandpa.
That's how I feel, right?
You're like, he calls me an old dad. I'm like, man,
Yeah,
I'm really old then. Yeah, I think when you do something that you enjoy doing and it ends without you choosing to end, it's always hard. You know, I think anytime you get fired from a job, let go from a job, and in this instance, it was just the industry has slowed down. You know, I was started in reality TV when you could essentially like pitch an idea on a napkin and people would be like, sure, let's shoot a pilot. Why not? Try. You know, they would shoot pilots about anything. I mean, one of the first pilots I worked on was called League of Extraordinary Celebrity Impersonators, and we found people that look like celebrities around LA, and then we just like did stuff. Like we hiked Runyon Canyon to see if people would notice. I mean, like no story behind it. We had like Keanu Reeves and Bono lookalikes. And they were like, yeah, here's some money. Shoot it. Like now it's got to be like, you got to have a celebrity, a literal celebrity, not an impersonator. And you got to have it all buttoned and you got to have a Bible. So I came from like, yeah, let's just make a bunch of stuff to like 30% of the industry in Los Angeles is down year over year. And it just continues to go down. And most of my colleagues are in other industries. They've just completely left. So I think that also brings a sense of like, I didn't choose to stop doing it. It chose me to stop doing it. So I think that also is hard. You know, I loved it. I loved producing TV. We had just had, my life also shifted having my first daughter right before I went to show run Bar Rescue. So then being out of town, I was like, oh man, this is a lot too. Traveling with my daughter at home. I would come home and see her for a few days and then I'd go back on the road. So I did start feeling that pull of fatherhood like LeBron James, but he doesn't seem to ever retire. Like, but you know, it's going to happen soon. So you kind of feel that. You're like, I want to be home with my kid a bit more. But then the industry just like, it stopped. And the phone call stopped, the email stopped. And I think there's a sense of career grief when that happens, that you just think, oh, they're going to email me. So you kind of just wait it out. The mistake that I made, knowing the industry was kind of on a decline, was, oh, my TV producing skills is going to translate to any industry. You know, I wear a lot of hats. I'm a marketer, I'm a PR, I communicate. So you feel like you have a lot of hats. And then when you start applying for jobs, you're like, yeah, I've done that. And then you don't get phone calls. You know, now everything's gone like AI resume and your TV producing is not one of the things people look for. So that was the mistake I made, thinking, it'll be easy to find a job, and then it wasn't. So I had the like career grief of not being able to get on another show and then also not get a job. And then you're in your mid 40s when you're, hitting retirement in the next 20 years, you know, like, you know, my parents, my dad did like the same profession, maybe a few different jobs, like his whole career. And then you retire. And now I'm like my mid 40s, like, I've got to pivot. And like, I can't continue to do what I enjoyed doing for 10 plus years. And I think once I decided like, I've got to make the pivot and say goodbye to what I did. And it's okay to say goodbye. You know, like I always tell my kids, the gentle parenting of the world now, that it's okay to not be okay. You know, I think we sometimes live in a world where like when you hear a screaming kid, it's just like, they got to be quiet. Like tell them to stop crying. They're fine.
Or it's like a sign of bad parenting if your kid is not like emotionally just still.
Exactly. And I think your initial instinct when your kid's crying is to be like, you're fine, but they're not. They're not fine. And I think that goes to us as adults too. Like it's okay to not be okay. You can sit in it and then you got to move forward with it. Once I was like, I'm going to say goodbye to it and it's okay. And I'm going to pivot into this new opportunity of dad content, even though it's scary and it's like starting your own business with 2 kids, you can do it. And that's kind of like once I was okay with saying goodbye and not waiting for those phone calls or continuing to reach out to friends to see who's hiring right now and just move forward in a new direction, is when opportunities started to come to me.
I think that's something to be said. I think it's like the whole idea of like kind of clearing a house or like processing things, taking the time to process and not listening to like when we're talking about parenting advice or your own personal process, not listening to what you should be feeling or how you should be approaching it, but kind of in a way, and not to lessen it, but kind of like what you were talking about, listening to the signal. What are your emotions telling you? What are the industry telling you? Like conceptually, like it should be easy to pivot. The industry is telling me it's not that simple. It's like learning it and iterating. And I think it's very powerful, and definitely on a personal level, loved reading that kind of as I go through my own pivots professionally. So really great that you kind of just speak about that, not just kind of from a lens of like, this is how I create content, but this is how also I emotionally and mentally process that. And I think that's a really important piece, because it's content creation it's a full game. It's not just kind of the mechanism, the tools you're using, but it's who you are and how you evolve and change as a person kind of behind the camera.
Right.
As it were.
Because if you move houses, you can't stay in the old house and keep some of your stuff there and move into a new one. You got to clear it all out, go into the new house. Same kind of concept.
And there's also like, I mean, to like use like software, like there's also kind of like the phase changeover. Like you kind of still kind of be in the old house a little bit and using it for storage, and then renting out a room in Airbnb and kind of like figuring out before you let go of the of the mortgage, as it were. But yeah, that's a very, very kind of powerful piece. As indicated in the name of the show, there's also kind of a piece of present. If you'd love to kind of just like share a little bit, I think like you have a lot of content around parenting. Would love to, and if you're up for it, kind of what you kind of see like be like the angle or kind of a good hook. Like the audience is a lot of people kind of working in software as a service and kind of consumer tech and kind of B2B stuff. What do you kind of see as like a great kind of natural alignment with the type of content you make in kind of that space?
Well, I think where I'm at right now is, I have built a brand out of dad content, and now I'm building a new brand of churning chaos into content. Because I think we're at a place right now that everyone's a content creator or needs to be in some way, whether you're a realtor, whether you're in software, whether you're just wanting to be behind the scenes. You can't be anymore. Because I think everyone, if you run any sort of business or you're trying to get a job or anything, you've got to consume or you got to create some sort of content. Because I think as great as AI is, we're also at a point of people want the authenticity and they want to know what's real. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, hey, I'm a realtor and this is me, and they're creating content on Instagram and they're not just showing pretty photos of a house, which anyone can do, but they're seeing a face behind all of it. And I think for me, teaching others what I've done into whatever career that they're doing is kind of the next iteration of, what I'm turning chaos into content or whatever it is your content you're wanting to do.
And taking that a step further, something that I personally do a lot of thought about is part of launching a new product, whether it's a new AI software tool or anything else, really is that brand component. And that brand component shows up in the websites you create and the content you create. And that's like an important piece for even like a small startup to embrace early on, because that's how you show up to investors, how you show up to the public. And that other piece, I think, is AI has lowered the barrier to entry in a lot of places. So the work to be done isn't necessarily in creating higher fidelity written content. It's more, how could you kind of level up emotionally or kind of in your coherence as a brand and how you express yourself and how you show up. And that's really powerful, and definitely encourage people listening. If what Devin is saying is interesting to you, definitely get in touch with him. Kenneth, would love to talk a little bit more about, I think we didn't touch on it as much, and if you like, I would love to learn a little bit more about as a content operator, kind of those notes of kind of bringing things together and publishing things. We'd love to, if you're interested, in talk a little bit more kind of the program management and kind of your methodology and how I think you've been across a couple different verticals, across a couple different industries, and just, for me, just reading through your background, just like the complexity, just kind of all the moving pieces. And it's not just kind of like, oh, I helped a team launch a software feature. It's like, no, I helped distribution centers launch in a number of cities, kind of, and I maybe not representing it completely correctly, but just like when I'm grokking it, it's really impressive. So I definitely wanted to give you those flowers, as it were.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's something to really think about when I'm thinking about like how that's really translated into like the content creation, because these are things I'm not actively thinking about, but these are achievements, right? And these are work experiences that I've had. I think most of all, a lot of the experience that I've accumulated and achievements I've made in my professional endeavor have all come from working with people and working with people well and being able to advance things. I think when we get into these businesses or these services that we're providing, at the end of the day, you're serving people and you're working with people. And I think being able to be relatable, being able to be someone who can communicate effectively, being able to be someone who's reliable, those things are skills that are transferable for me when it comes to content creation. And for me, it comes back down to focusing on the details and paying attention to every component and making sure you're showing up your best. I know Devin was just talking about showing up emotionally for yourself and being able to be, at your highest self or in your lowest points, but being able to take all of who you are and still be able to put your best foot forward and show up every day. I think that's what it really all boils down to, And I think for me, showing up at companies, learning the business, learning what the goals are, and being able to think of strategies, think of different ways to execute, or what are the pitfalls that we're not seeing, and kind of thinking of those things when people aren't. That's something that just comes like really natural to me. I'm just always kind of an observer and just kind of deep in thought, and I'm somebody who's willing to speak up. I'm somebody who's willing to bring those thoughts to the forefront, and a lot of that's helped, with succeeding professionally. But a lot of that same skill has helped with succeeding on content creation, seeing what's going on, speaking up, bringing those ideas to the forefront, being relatable, being able to meet people where they are. And so there's a lot of, I think, overlap in both the professional and the content creation journey that I've been able to blindly utilize to my advantage to be able to kind of execute at a high level on both sides, but very appreciative of all the experience. And I think it's just one life experience, and all of these things are kind of different pieces to your treasure chest that I just continue to add in.
No, and it's something kind of, and hearing you talk about your content and your attention to craft, and craft can be kind of in creating content, or it can be kind of in work processes, or in kind of learning new skills and learning new tools, and kind of that curiosity and sense of learning. And then added on top of that, kind of, as you spoke, your natural aptitude and like wanting to kind of to be a social person, to connect with people and understand where they're at, and kind of that attention to detail, that kind of mastering a craft, like all that comes together. And definitely agreed. Like for me as well, like my background was in different areas, and program management is a space where you're kind of asked to call upon these different ideas. And one day you're doing it. It's I was watching the Paramount show, the Offer, and kind of like seeing what a producer does, and it was a very like small lens of it, but there's a lot of corollaries. It's interesting that we're all kind of have to a degree similar backgrounds of like it can be thankless at times, but like without you things don't happen.
Very thankless, right?
It's extremely thankless. On one hand, you have people telling you what do you actually do, and like you just change statuses on tickets, like what do you, and on the other hand, it's people know it when you don't have process in place. Things don't happen, things don't get done, and when you can't rely on good vibes alone to get things done as much as we would all like to,
or as efficiently, right? And it's like somebody has to be like watching what's going on, right? So it's like a lot of times people are just so focused and deep in their work, which is great, but you need someone to kind of balance out all the acts, right? And
to have that meta outlook.
And so I think, and that transfers into content creation. It's like everyone's kind of focused in a deep niche, and me being able to pivot from music to podcast style to interview style. It's just watching what's going on and from a wide perspective, from a consumer's perspective, and figuring out, hey, where can I fit in and make a transition.
It's like learning and listening to signal, but also like what is my unique voice, and where can I kind of like make an impact. And it's incredible hearing about both of your journeys is so resonant, and like it's in a way, like it's knowing our natural abilities and our natural gifts and being grateful for that, but it's also just, it's taking the impetus to just put one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden like realize, oh wow, like when I step, I make an earthquake. And we all have that in different ways in our lives, and that's an incredible kind of powerful feeling. Moving to the third part of our podcast name, talking about the future. We'd love to hear about kind of your thoughts about the future, whether it's about where the creator industry is going overall, what you would like to do with kind of yourself, whether, let's say, like an investment fund came and said, hey, we want to invest in your content, and we're writing you a blank check, like whatever you kind of feel comfortable about. This is kind of your space to just pontificate about the future. We'll start with you, Devin.
I think as far as creator economy as a whole, I see it going back to where I kind of started. The creators are creating shows. We just had a movie weekend where it was the top YouTubers that were the highest grossing films. So I think we're seeing some of what creators have been trying to, like, I guess, break into Hollywood, but basically be taken just as serious. I came from traditional media where it was, a lot of the focus was on gatekeeping, not necessarily the best product. And I think we are finding Hollywood in a situation because of so much gatekeeping, in my opinion. Maybe people don't agree, but when I first started out, I wanted to be on a TV show or a movie like as an actor, but you have to have a SAG card. But the only way you can get a SAG card is if you have a SAG card, and like it's a very like catch-22, and you're like, what is this? And then I wanted to get an agent, but the only way to get an agent is to know an agent, but I don't know an agent. Now you can create some content, put it on YouTube, and can end up in theaters. So I see some of it coming back full circle, finding myself in positions now, consulting on unscripted, scripted, vertical series. And then for me personally, being able to produce some of those is where I'm going. And then also doing a podcast, and then kind of taking the lessons that I've learned of turning chaos into content and helping other creators or professionals create content. And then from there, just continue to scale the brand and the IP, whether it's CPG, whether it's merch, whether it's more keynote speaking, but essentially continue to share this creator journey, because we're also seeing with a lot of these layoffs that people are like, I don't know what to do. And I found something that I've done. They don't necessarily have to be a creator myself, but some of the lessons that I've learned can be helpful to those people as well. Got a children's book that I'm working on based off of a handshake that my daughter and I created, where she was unable to go to school because it was too hard. She was in kindergarten. Tears, crying, screaming every morning. I'm a big NBA fan. Loved basketball my whole life. That would have been it. I was watching the NBA and seeing all these handshakes that Steph Curry and LeBron do, and I was like, what if we created our own special handshake? Sure enough, we did that. No tears. She literally walked into school for the rest of kindergarten, and now all through first grade, we did it every single morning, and we didn't have a problem. And I was like, oh, this is something that's been... And I shot a video, talked about it. Newsweek picked it up, talking about what a great story this is. And I was like, oh, this is a great children's book. This is something that dads, moms, parents can do, because I know I'm not the only one whose kid struggles to go into class. It's a big change. So that's one of the other things. So if you're writing checks or you're a book publisher out there, this is where I'm headed. I think it's a great thing for parents and kids alike. And yeah, I think it's we're not even at like the tip of the iceberg. We're just like, I think where it's going, where it's headed is just going to surprise so many people, and I'm excited to be a part of it. I wish I was a little bit younger, to be honest, a little more energy to be a part of it. But hey, my story is my story. I'm in my mid-40s with 2 kids for a reason, and here I am.
That's incredibly powerful, and I feel like you both are really adept at bringing kind of a story to life across the different slices of the content flywheel in a way that's unique and doesn't feel like you're kind of taking the captions from an Instagram video and putting it in a newsletter, for example. You are adapting it and kind of respecting the native format, and there's a lot of opportunity kind of with all the new channels that are opening up. It's incredibly resonant, and I think like just the more I think about it, that brand aspect, that an idea of like it can show up in different ways. Like you can be a content creator in different styles. I know for me, like I was at first just like written content, getting comfortable with doing that, and that kind of helps you build some of those muscles to express in other ways. Kenneth, let's talk about the future.
Yeah, the future is something, right? So I think when I think about the future for our family, right, I'm always thinking of a family brand, right? Think in that respect where it's like, my whole goal initially starting with content was to allow my son to express himself and create a way that we can bond, right? And it's been fruitful, and it's exceeded all expectations as far as bonding is concerned. Like, we have these videos, right? We have this content that we're going to look at 10, 20 years from now, and he's going to always, when I'm gone, he's going to be able to see that, right? And I would love to continue that tradition with a larger family, and create a more of a family brand and align ourselves with brands or opportunities that come to us naturally. So whether that's creating our own products, or that's creating or just aligning ourselves with different brands, and just being the voice, and as far as like being a father to my community, and showing that, hey, you can be a father, a single father at that, and show up for your son and or your daughter, right? And move across country and kind of tell that story of success, that, hey, it's not impossible, and give hope to the next generation of people coming up. So I think that's really my entire goal, is really to just be family oriented, create these memories, and if we're able to create a living off of that, then that's great. But also just set my family and my kids up for success. So when my son leaves high school, he's 18. He already has a social media platform, as Devin alluded to. Like, the social media creators, I feel, are going to be leading media in general, and be the vehicle to kind of the vehicle of marketing. And so for him to be able to have that opportunity in his hands when he leaves high school, I think is going to be invaluable to him. I look back, I wish I had that opportunity. And so I think just setting him up for success, and that's really my immediate goal.
That's powerful. I mean, because like the brand is the values, and that expresses itself in kind of different content formats and physical merchandise. And it's also a platform. I think like what's really kind of powerful is like, even like, for example, kind of like your content around gentle parenting and the realities of it. Like there's a lot of lessons, and like it's entertainment can also be educational, and not kind of where it's like shoehorned in, but it can actually be like through sharing your own story. There's a lot of kind of resonance there, and a lot of opportunity to that mixture of kind of commerce and entertainment, but also bringing value into people's lives, and having people feel less alone as they're going through these transitions, and as they're dealing with the odds and the curveballs that life kind of throws at us. So that's really kind of really important and really, really powerful. Something that I think about, and I think is, especially when you're putting yourself kind of out there online, and kind of as your brand and persona grows, if some people don't put too much thought into this, but how do you handle fame? How do you handle kind of on the one hand, like a lot of more kind of your story kind of is shared with an audience, and there's kind of that connection. I mean, beyond just parasocial, there's the kind of the genuine kind of connection with the people who consume the content. What has been helpful for you kind of in navigating that and dealing with that reality, as it were?
I guess I wouldn't necessarily, that you say, consider it as fame, but I guess you've got eyeballs, and it's attention. And I think as a dad to two girls, and just a dad in general, I think that there is a balance. I do find that sometimes the content we put out there can have negative feedback, and I think it is a daily battle struggle to figure out like how much am I putting out there, because one day they're going to look at it, their friends are going to look at it, everyone's got an opinion nowadays. I think is what social media has also opened everyone to have an opinion, and I think most of it is positive, and I think the negative comments are nothing that I don't already know that's coming, so it doesn't necessarily affect me. It just goes to show that, I mean, we're polarized so much that it's not like, oh my gosh, what, there was a negative comment, they think I'm a terrible parent, because everyone's got an opinion. Do I think I'm a terrible parent? No. Do I know how hard parenting is? Yes. And I think those negative comments just highlight the fact that it's hard, and that I'm sharing that. And if you have a negative opinion about how I'm raising my kid, that's why I'm on here, because it is hard, and it's so much easier in the world to get negative when your kid is acting up than like somebody to go, you're doing a good job, Dad. So like you get more positive, I think, on social than you do in the real world, because most people are like, keep your kid quiet, my kid never acted like that. You rarely get, yeah, Dad, you're doing a good, I know it's hard, great job. No one does that in public, and I think you get more of that on social, and you do get some of that village that we all crave that just doesn't exist, especially in California, because we all live so far away. But there is a sense of a parent village on social that we feel like, okay, this is our little village. And somebody just responded to me the other day, I laughed, thank you so much, I don't feel so alone in this parenting thing. So I think that's how I handle it, focusing on the positive ones and realizing that there is a positive impact to the content, and the negative's going to come because you get it all the time, no matter what.
I almost like think about this as just my own kind of perception. I think when it comes with negative stuff, it's almost like an inoculation of sorts, kind of like you get used to it. And at first it kind of can throw, I know the first time I ever got a negative comment, I kind of you spin out a little bit, but then you learn kind of, and like I think that's really positive. Like, what radio station are you tuning into? Are you tuning into the positive? Are you tuning into the connection? Or are you kind of feeding into the stuff that doesn't take you anywhere necessarily?
Right. And I think I grew up in the 90s where I think we grew up in like everything was positive, and I think now we've hit an age where you get both. There's a lot of negative and a lot of positive, and whatever you tune to is kind of how you react to it, and then how you also carry on, and I think it's also beneficial. We don't live in a, rainbows and butterflies days of the 90s. I think socials also open us to that. Like, there's a lot of things going on in the world that we can do good and help, but like, there's always been that. We just kind of lived in those rose-colored glasses for a long time, and it felt like, things are great, and then you realize, wow, it's not all so great.
I mean, in a way, I think that's like, to me at least, is like ultimate positivity, is understanding that things aren't optimal, but kind of figuring out where you go from there. It's
Right.
not kind of ignoring it. It's acknowledging it, and that's where the power is. Like, kind of we spoke about, like acknowledging the grief that allows you to move forward, as opposed to being like everything is awesome. Like, no, sometimes everything is not awesome, but this is where I go from here.
Right.
This is where I proceed.
It's not a Lego movie.
I mean, that song was playing in my head as you were talking.
As you said it, I was like,
Yeah,
everything
exactly.
is awesome.
I was thinking about that meme with that guy in the middle with the fire going on. He's just like a character. He's like, everything's awesome.
Yeah,
Everything is fire.
exactly.
Kenneth, over to you, or you can pass.
Yeah, I think the way we receive attention these days is a lot different than what attention was before. I think there was a lot more of a mystique to people who got attention, and it was a lot more of the line between people who were infamous or famous or had attention and people who were not was more defined. But now I feel like it's more, the gap has closed, and people are just wanting to meet you. And I think I try to keep myself in a relatable mindset, and I'm just like, hey, I'm just like you guys, there's nothing different, and trying to instill that value into my son, because he's in the eyes of the public as well. It's been difficult, because he's like the coolest kid in all his groups, right? Camp, school, but trying to remind him, hey, we're just regular people. People just love our story, and they love our approach and our perspective, but you treat people with respect, right? And I think that's just our day to day. People come up to us, let's take a photo. We don't mind at all, and it's, just being appreciative of the opportunity to have attention, to be relatable, to be a family where people really see themselves as well. So I think being more appreciative and grateful of the opportunity is our approach. And yeah, just like, let's keep the kids safe.
No, it's a powerful theme. It's something that I think about as well. I mean, I think like being in tech, it's something that I've always like, it's hard though. Like you go to work in a tech office, and like by the third day you're like, eggs again for breakfast, and it's you feel like you never want to normalize things, which you want to feel kind of grateful for, and continue to just be like certain things you get used to, but kind of just to be grateful for the opportunity. And that kind of, I think, helps you sustain things in the long run, and it helps you continue to show up and continue not to take things as a given, but continue to kind of to innovate and connect with new people and kind of treat people kind of the way we want to be treated as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And even looking at the comments, it's tough sometimes, but it's data, right? I try to look at it as data, and you have to look at it all with a filter. Like, you can't take it personally. You kind of, and I think through time I've grown a thicker skin, and I just look at the data, and whether it's like constructive criticism or just like an attack, you have to kind of be able to like see between the two and say, okay, this is maybe something I should take a look at for myself. Sometimes people call out your blind spots, and it's like, okay, take that note to my therapist, and like, well, should we talk about this, but yeah, just not trying to take things personally. It's, people are just talking online, and it's,
It's people's kind of motivation, context. I treat it, I think about sometimes it's like a product backlog.
Yeah.
Like some bugs we're going to fix,
Yeah,
some bugs.
Right.
Just leave it.
We're going to leave it.
Yeah.
The gradient's going to stay as it is.
What are we prioritizing?
Right.
Like,
Exactly. It's an exercise in prioritization.
Right.
Yeah.
A creator that has helped me, she had said when you're creating content, you should think about, you're selling tickets to the comment section. So some of your most viral videos, the one that gets the most attention is the ones where the comments are exploding. Because if you think about it, that's really what you're doing. You want people to engage. You want people to comment. Again, going back to my hoop days, like, sure, it's about who wins, but what took the NBA was entertainment. The Showtime Lakers, and now it wasn't just like, oh, whoever scored the most, but they had to sell tickets. They had to sell tickets. And it's got to be a product that's entertaining. So if you're creating a product that gets people to comment, then it's entertaining. And I think that's also, I have to keep that in mind, that I'm intentionally creating content to get people to comment, good and bad. Because if it's just good, it's just going to end there. Like, cool, great job. And then that's it. But if you get a little bit of like, maybe you shouldn't let your daughter hit her sister in the face. Maybe you should be a better dad. Then you're like, then you get people like, it's not his fault. Maybe if he wasn't so old, maybe you could take, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I've sold tickets to the comment section based off of what I wrote. And then you're engaging people. And then that's, I think, where more positive can come from it, because you get opportunities to discuss and teach when you get some negative as well.
It's that kind of the theme of like the access to the full range of the human experience.
Right.
It's not just kind of a shallow slice. A saying which I've been saying a lot recently is like it's the idea of like capped risk has capped upside. So like the more you kind of lean into things can kind of go in either direction, but you also have the opportunity for more impact.
Right.
So true.
It's something that I've thought about a lot recently. There's a lot. It's like things that kind of like the past couple of days I've been thinking about it a lot more. I'd like to do an interesting exercise.
Okay.
The things like we're like talking about is kind of a lot like you guys are kind of have established more kind of a presence. Let's say there's someone in the audience, they kind of have a passion or something they kind of want to learn a little bit more about being a content creator. Doing like a brand 101 exercise, kind of what would you like, you're starting from scratch, so you have your areas of interest. Like, how do you like figure out like what are my kind of like my brand pillars, what I should focus on, and then like how I go about kind of taking that first step, executing, and not like trying to be like, I want to be like famous on LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram tomorrow.
Right.
Like taking it small, kind of small scale. What would you recommend those first steps to look like?
Well, I think the first steps for me would be, if I'm starting off fresh, I'd want to take a look at myself first. And what do I stand for? What do I enjoy? What am I interested in? Who do I see as somebody that is very similar to me in the space? I think taking those initial steps to just figure out who you are and who you align with can help you advance a lot faster, because you're not just walking into the wilderness blind. You kind of have a sense of direction. You have an idea or an identity that you're really related to, or you're really drawn to, and so you can really kind of follow in those footsteps and pick the great things that you love. And so that's what I would do. I would just first look internally and then look externally as far as what's going on in the landscape, and try to align myself with that. Like I said, you don't have to recreate the wheel. There's you're gonna have your own perspective, but there's somebody out there that's similar to you making content that you love, and literally copy and paste that first if you have to, and then start weaving in more of your personality or your more of things that matter to you, your pillars, what do you stand for, and start trying to transition into like a more customized version of that. But I think that's what I would start with. It's figure out who you want to be, who you want to show up as, and who is similar to you, copy and paste, and then customize.
And if we're sharing some like parrots theories today,
Yeah.
something I've been thinking a lot about kind of applies across music and other things, like the idea of like remix culture, whether it's kind of building code on top of new code platforms, or music on top of music, or ideas, or kind of like taking like an old school fairy tale and kind of reinterpreting it. Like it's not not just only that you're copying someone else's kind of way of doing it, but you're remixing it. You're adding your own spin. You're learning the steps to the dance so you can improvise, so you can kind of do that jazz routine, or you're sampling that beat so you can layer on kind of your interpretation. And that's a really powerful and really practical. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Remix. I love that.
Remix culture. I'm gonna like start like a startup movement around it. We're gonna take off.
I think for me, I mentioned earlier to pick a niche. I think the algorithm is similar to cable TV, that they know exactly where they're going to place you. And I actually have people are like, how do I pick a niche? For me, there's 3 things that you should do. One, what are you passionate about? Think about what is something that you're passionate, that you really enjoy. Number 2, what's your experience or expertise? Because we all have years of experience, whether it's in a job or just in life. And then number 3, what's your current reality? So for me, and it was the chaos of being a dad, and that was my current reality. Then I started incorporating some of my experience, expertise of being a reality TV producer, and created some, we edited our Hawaiian vacation like a reality show, took off. Al Roker was chatting about us. People.com were chatting about us. So it was like putting all 3 of those things together to help you find your niche, I think is what'll help you overcome that, I don't know where to start. Because you have all 3 of those things inside of you. And I say, just start with that. And then like he had mentioned, just start, just do it, just create the content. If no one watches it, then no one's watching it. But if you just start, eventually maybe your mom or your dad will be your first fans, and they'll like it, and then some of your friends, and then some. So just start with where you're at, and that's the biggest takeaway. And I think as real as you are, and if you're real and authentic, then it doesn't have to be polished. We're in an unpolished age because people want realness.
And also like paying attention, I think, to what the engagement means. And maybe your numbers aren't as big. There's kind of the story of like Colin and Samir. They met, like he posted his first lacrosse video, and Colin got 750 views, but one of them was Samir, and that's how they met, and that's how they kind of build their thing. So who are your true fans? Who is engaged? Like if your really kind of goal as a creator is to share your story, if you connect with people who truly engage, that kind of impact resonates, as opposed to being like, oh, I want to be famous. That's not a very useful kind of method. I mean, you can buy fame, but that has a very shelf life and has a ceiling, as it were.
Would you say cap?
Was it
Capped.
capped risk has capped upside? And
Yeah.
it applies in all areas.
Yeah, and I think one thing we haven't mentioned as well is consistency. I think consistency above all. I mean, not above all, but it's a major pillar, I think, especially for our success, where, similar to what Devin's talking about as far as like the algorithm is built to get you in front of your tribe, right? But it takes time for the algorithm to get to know you. It's like a person. I mean, it sounds pretty crazy, but it wants to get.
We're in the age of AI. Like,
yeah.
The limits of like what's acceptable, like to talk about robots, have like went out the window like years ago.
I know, exactly. We got robots doing laundry now. So yeah,
allegedly,
right? Hey, if I forget the brand Neo, if you want to send me a robot, please. We'll take a hand. But it does take time for the algorithm to get to know you and to know your tribe. And so you have to allot for that time. It's like, you have to bake in some additional time. And what that means is consistency and showing up the same way when you see success over time. I think one thing that this go around in my content creation that I did differently was I took some time, right? So I had a friend who was a YouTuber, successful YouTuber, who had signed my son for to his media group. And he passed away, and after he passed away, he saw so much in my son and I, and he was, before he had passed away, we'd be talking all the time, and he'd be saying, hey, like, keep going, keep being consistent. As soon as he passed away, me and my son made it like a devotion to like stay consistent no matter what and see what happens. And we stayed consistent for like 3-4 months. It was maybe from March till like August-ish. No views, still. And I think that's like the algorithm calibrating, right? It's like understanding what your content is so it can understand who to put it in front of. And through that consistency, in like August, we hit our like first real viral video again, after some years. And we haven't stopped being consistent since. So, we're reading data and we're, leaning into the formats that are working. But every week, one thing I will not skip out on is consistency, because the minute you stop feeding the algorithm, it's almost like a friend who hasn't seen you in a long time. They forget who you are. And if you treat the algorithm like a person and you stay in front of it and you're constantly engaging with it, then it will work in your favor. But if you're not creating that engagement, if you're not being consistent, then it's not going to really latch on or understand what you're trying to do. And so consistency like above all for me, has been something that's helped our accounts really, really be successful.
To use Devin's phrasing, if you're selling tickets, but you don't show up to the arena, you leave after one song.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah.
Right. But it's nothing new. Wasn't it Malcolm Gladwell that talked about in the tipping point? Was it 1,000 hours?
Yeah. Or
Google
10,000.
that before.
Yeah.
10,000 hours. So it's the same type of thing. They talk about that with like professional athletes. You put in that time before that tipping point, and the same is with creating content on social. There's a tipping point, but you got to put in the hours.
Yeah, you got to show up and kind of, and it's all goes down to that foundation and the values you build and that kind of.
And I think it's for us too, like as creators, like you're putting in, you get your system in place and you figure out your cadence, you figure out your true, real voice. So it's not just training the audience, we're training ourselves too. And then you get to the point where you become, that brand or whatever it is that you've been putting the hours in, and then it resonates with your audience and it resonates with you. And then you're like, oh yeah, I am the Steph Curry of IG,
Right. Yeah.
of over 40 dads.
On a personal note, this is like awesome. This is my first kind of like live show in this setting, and like in terms of like viewing content creators, seeing what other people are doing when it comes to the space of podcasts, seeing what other people do. I mean, we're in LA, and like seeing what people kind of do in these shows and the setups they have, and having the opportunity to have amazing guests in a live studio in a great set in this the Glendale podcast kind of recording studio, which is amazing, incredible place, highly recommend. It's I'm grateful, and for me also, just like starting, like my first was a Zoom call, and here we are, kind of episode 30. Kind of, I'm really grateful to sharing the moment with you guys.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not a non-airing pilot like I'm used to. We're in
I'm asking some network execs to
Yeah.
you take a look at it.
Let's get it cleared.
give a bunch of notes.
So like, what if like Devin wasn't a dad? What if he was like a firefighter?
Yeah.
What if he was further out of frame?
Yeah.
Can you cut that?
We can have AI do that.
Yeah, right. No, this is great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. And,
Yeah, this
it's
is
been
awesome.
a pleasure. Thank you for speaking to us. And I think even these questions has just been, gets your brain thinking a little more, and it makes us makes me want to double down.
And for me as well, I mean, I think the whole goal of the podcast is to like uncover that. Like, what is the motivation? What kind of, we're layering on my theories. I feel the personal and professional is so intertwined. As you get understanding of what your personal values are, you figure out how you want to show up professionally. What do you want to be doing? Who are the people you want to collaborate with? What do you want to put in the world? And that changes. It's like we change, and we're not all kind of still wearing our hot topic fashion, even though I do from time to time.
Yeah.
We evolve, we change. It's anything professionally. Kind of what interests you at one point doesn't later. And I think the power of this is showing people that they're not alone in pivoting and in figuring things out. And you can be successful, and just because you're successful doesn't mean you're stuck there. If your values and just change, you can tear it all down and start again. And that's the beauty of creative destruction, as it were. And that's past, present, future.
Cool. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And that's a wrap. Woo!
Thank you. We didn't double punch, did we? We recorded it.
Yeah.
Past, present, future, I'm done being patient.